When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of the ClickerCast, your weekly show where we break down all of the Last of Us news, episode breakdown, character development story, and much, much more. You're joining myself, Chris, one of your hosts, alongside the man of many pixels, my fellow ClickerCast member, Mr. Richie. Welcome back.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, indeed. We've got another fantastic breakdown of another fantastic episode of the ongoing HBO series, of course. Written and adapted by Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin for HBO and Sky Original over here. Although I do have a beef to grudge Richie with the Sky Original thing because it's not made by them. So why do they lay claim to it being a Sky Original when you've basically paid for the HBO rights to distribute it in the UK?
That's a good point, actually. It's like it's made by everyone but Sky, basically.
Yeah, they basically just get a copy of the footage and they just put it out with their own marketing branding on it. But either way, we won't get into the legalities of all that. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Of course, we do this show live every single week. If you're listening on podcast services or YouTube on demand after the fact, you can join us 8 p.m. every Tuesday live here on Helix Plays Games. And get involved with the chat. Like, loads of the awesome people out there. I can see plenty of our Helix heroes. Our members of the channel are out there tonight too. Sednaz in there. Jin's joining us. Hungry Moogle and Don Grattan to start off with. You're all awesome. Thank you, folks, for jumping in and joining us and supporting the channel. But as I mentioned, you can get it right here on YouTube. You can get it out there on your podcast service. So if you prefer to listen to this thing on the move hands-free, you can find it on all those lovely podcast services out there, alongside all the official breakdowns and everything else The Last of Us. If you are in fact a Helix hero or want to support the channel that little bit further, you can get early access to other content we do on the channel, such as our weekly PlayStation podcast, our Xbox podcast, Talking the PS and XPass respectively, and also you get access to all the cool Firefly and clicker emojis that everyone's dropping in the chat right now. Richie, we're here tonight to discuss episode 3, Long Time. But before we do get into all of our first thoughts and impressions, I just want to take a moment and say rest in peace to Annie Wersching, who actually portrayed Tess in the video game series. She unfortunately passed away this past week with a short 2-year battle with cancer. So rest in peace, Annie. Obviously, the character of Tess in the video game was absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure Anna Torv, who portrayed in the TV show, took a lot of inspiration from that character development. And it's sad to see someone taken so early. And I think especially when the show's at its absolute prime and height, it's a shame that she doesn't. I mean, hopefully she got to see it beforehand, but you know what I mean. Like one of the highlights of her career and stuff. Unfortunately, taken away from us too soon.
She's probably been involved to a certain degree. Like it is a sad loss, and to be honest, without her, Last of Us might not have ever become the thing it is now.
That's true, without those terrific scenes and terrific acting. And we're going to break all of that down with the rest of the show. But I did want to do a special shout because it's very relevant to the game and the TV series, of course. Music, once again, fantastic on this week's episode, composed by Gustavo Santaolalla. And interesting enough, different director this week, Richie. It was not Neil Druckmann or Craig Mazin. They actually drafted in Peter Hoare, famous for Umbrella Academy and Daredevil episodes. And there's a reason for that, no doubt. And we'll get into that as we break down the show.
Well, I think in series like this, quite often they'll have a different director per episode. But with Peter Hoare, there was a very specific reason why they wanted this guy. Absolutely. So let's dig into it. Of course, these shows can run quite long because if you're new to here, if you've somehow made it to episode 3 without checking out 2 and 1, they are still available on the channel. But we do like to go in depth. We don't just give our overall thoughts, Richie. We go almost scene for scene. And if we had more time in our lives, we probably would go into a more granular breakdown detail. But we'll give you our overview. And of course, we encourage everybody in the chat with us tonight to throw your questions out, throw your thoughts out. We want this to be a community-based thing. If you're fans of The Last of Us, we'd encourage you all to get involved. But like, subscribe, click share, do all that magical jazz so more people can find our fantastic content. But let's get into the episode. Richie, long time, runtime of 1 hour, 15 minutes. Ironic, I know, our second long episode of the series so far. I do believe the rest of them after this one are a bit more to the hour mark. I think they've kind of had 2 big ones, and from what I understand is the next few are going to be a little bit more condensed. I mean, we've already talked about like episode runtime with HBO, where, to be honest, they don't seem to just care about sticking to a very discrete, it must be an hour, it must be 40 minutes, it must be 20 minutes, whatever. I think they always just go, what makes sense for the episode, do that. But before we give our impressions, I think we do need to keep reminding people this is a full spoiler warning in effect. Anything about either game, anything about the show is fair game for this podcast.
Yeah, we're not. I've seen a few people do videos on YouTube and they basically keep everything until the end, but I also feel like it's so inherent to the show.
I'd rather just give the spoiler warning up front, so people have time. Go, you know what? I haven't watched the show. I haven't played the games. I'm playing it alongside whatever. I don't want anything spoiled. Then they can come back and watch later, and it means we're not constantly dancing on thin ice.
Yeah, we're not sneaking around clickers hoping to avoid making a sound that's a spoiler. Of course, the original game's 10-year-old now, so I think it's safe ground to comment on. If you've not played it, go away, play the game, come back. Yeah. I am curious, this week's episode, those along at home, much like yourself, Richie, who are playing the game chapter by chapter, this episode very much deviates from the video game completely. So what do you do as a gamer? What's your plan for this week's play-along? Just hold it till next week and see if it matches up?
Well, I think the obvious thing is to have sex with Nick Offerman.
I mean, if we all could put that on our CV, right? But yeah, we'll break that down. We'll get into all that. But no, realistically, what is your plan for the game? Are you just going to hold out a week and see what next week brings?
I'll just play. I'll play through the Billstown stuff. Probably the next few days. Just it is going to be very different, obviously, from the show, but yeah, it's still adapting. There's a lot in Billstown, while the game plays out completely differently. A lot of the kind of points, the way the characters develop happens. Kind of weird. I know that in the show it's very much more focused on Bill and Frank. In the game it's still focused more on Joel and Ellie. But it kind of like the Bill and Frank stuff mirrors the journey that Joel and Ellie are about to go through. So they kind of are setting up the same sort of stuff, just in a different way.
Yeah, and we did know going into this episode we would get a lot more backstory from these characters. So in the video game, we know that you never actually meet Frank. You basically find Frank after his demise. Again, going into spoilers, but we meet Frank when he's been bitten. He's tried to leave Bill's town. He's basically wanted his own life. Bill's stuck in his ways. He leaves a note to say basically he's fed up of the life they're stuck in and he wanted to get out. He tried to escape. He tried to steal a car battery. He got bit, and before he turned, he ended up hanging himself in just a random house. And throughout Joel and Bill's interaction, they end up stumbling across him in the kind of final leg of their journey to get the car for Joel and Ellie. And we kind of just, aside from a couple of letters here and there and a bit of environmental storytelling, we don't know about that. We know Bill has a partner, but that's about the extent of it.
Yeah, and their relationship in the game is very different.
They hate each other.
Well, yes and no.
In the sense that we almost see actually reflected in the characters in the TV show. Yeah, but in terms of the game, it is very much a gameplay section of The Last of Us. There's not much story to be told. It's a lot of fight scenes, a lot of action, a lot of scavenging, a lot of navigating around clickers in a graveyard area. And as we know, that doesn't translate to television. So again, for those people out there going, "Oh, it's not like the game," this part, what did you expect to happen? Like an 80-minute action explosive scene with monsters? It's not going to happen.
Have you seen any much negativity on this episode because of the departure? Because I've only really seen positive takes on this.
I was very surprised to see a lot of people
watching
out there.
I was dreading looking at Twitter, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly the same. I think there's a lot of stuff that's visualized on television, maybe for the first time in mainstream media, and I was expecting to see more vitriol in comments across social media, and surprisingly, no.
I'm sure it's out there, but I haven't seen it.
Have you met the internet?
Yeah.
Have you met the comment section? But we will get into breaking down kind of the themes and what they portrayed in this episode. But we're introduced to new characters in Bill, played by Nick Offerman, and Frank, played by Murray Bartlett. And we don't really see much of kind of the other characters. They are very loose, but we do start off in a different place. So before we get into the breakdown, first overall impressions then, Richie? I feel like we've given our vibe off already, but what are your thoughts?
My initial thoughts were I was a bit mixed because it is such a departure from the game, and there's a few of the more memorable moments that happen in the game that didn't happen. But on reflection, I thought it was incredibly beautifully done story, and the actiony bits that kind of stand out, the classic Joel upside down, trying to keep shooting, trying to keep the clickers off the runners off Ellie. That could happen somewhere else in the story, and it doesn't need to be here. Yeah, and I think because the story between Bill and Frank was done so incredibly well, it was 100% worth the departure.
Yeah, I would say so. Well, at the end of it, I kind of sat back. I watched them with my wife on a Monday night, and then I kind of watch it again for the show on my own, in my own little kind of Last of Us bubble where I can comprise all my thoughts into one place when I'm doing the show notes for our document. But yeah, I just finished it and thought, I just watched 80 odd minutes of The Last of Us, and I knew nothing about it. Knew nothing what to expect. And as someone who's like thoroughly played through the games and like lifted every rock and looked under every nook and cranny, to have like new content for me, like a backstory for characters that I know about and that world that they live in, was just like, give it to me. And as you said, they also told like one of the most amazing romantic love stories that you've ever seen portrayed on television. Yeah, not just in a post-apocalyptic world, but
not
anything.
Just the fact that it was a same-sex relationship. I think it was just one of the best love stories told, full stop.
Absolutely. And we'll drill into all that. But yeah, overall thoughts, clearly, again, another stellar episode. I know this one was billed going into it by journalists and critics as one of the top ones to watch out for, and I think it definitely delivered. But not on maybe the same themes and trends that everyone was probably expecting from this episode, because like you, I thought we're going to get the video game introduction, Joel's going to get caught in a trap, we're going to get infested, kind of more clickers and monsters, he's going to free Ellie, we're going to see that dynamic between Ellie and Bill and Joel, and that they're at loggerheads with each other.
I expected the Frank stuff to be more flashbacks. Between Bill and Frank, how they met, how like their relationship developed, how it blew up, and then I was still going into this expecting this full-on, absolutely paranoid, setting up traps all over the place. Bill you get from the games, but that isn't really who we got. You can see the character could have went that direction, but the way him meeting Frank put him on a different path, which actually I think is more meaningful for Joel going forward.
There's a lot of things to kind of break down, explore in this episode. Hungry Moogle in the chat says it was one of the best love stories on television in quite some time. And Jem Bear is in there as well, so thank you for stopping by, folks. And of course, questions, everything, welcome in the chat. We'll break them down as we go through the episode. So Richie, let's get to the episode breakdown. Another long episode, as I said, but we will go through it in as much detail as we feel fit. To start off with, no cold open this episode. We got the HBO static screen and then straight into the amazing Last of Us intro theme, which, of course, we've been treated the last few weeks with cold open, setting the scene, usually 20 years before the outbreak day. We didn't get that this time. We cold opened on Joel's injured hand still. He's still healing slowly. I'm telling you, Richie, he just needs to wrap a bandage around his wrist and he's fine. That's what happened.
Did get a cold open?
A literal.
The cold opening was Joel this time. Because this episode isn't really about Joel and Ellie. They don't progress. They don't really do much through the course of this episode when you think about it.
They just walk 5 hours and talk to each other pretty much.
They go for a walk, they get a bill, then they leave.
It's quite
90% of what they do.
Hassle-free 5-hour excursion for the two of those.
And for the story they decide to tell, I think throwing more stuff in there wouldn't be needed and probably just a bit out of place. It would have been feel like they're trying to just stick to a formula for the sake of it.
Absolutely. There's an interesting
I think it's the right decision.
Point we'll get to right at the end of the episode where the two creators, Neil and Craig, talked about what their theories were for the cold opening of each episode, so we'll get into that. But yeah, we open with Joel, hand in the stream, just kind of trying to, again, heal his wounds, mend his wounds as such, and I thought it was quite interesting that as he's in there, of course, he hasn't shown much emotion, Joel, other than sheer anger, the last two episodes. For him in this one to kind of show that quiet solace where he builds a little cairn of rocks just while he's got his hand in the stream, and for those who don't know, that's usually like a symbol of, it's almost like a gravestone, like a marker of someone lost, and it's, you find them scattered throughout the world at like older sites and stuff, and a lot of older kind of communities used to do that. And interesting enough, even though this is like such a touching moment, it's clearly building it in respect of Tess. In the Uncharted games, the other Naughty Dog franchise, there's a trophy for knocking over like 20 cairns in and around the world, which seems a bit disrespectful if that's what they represent. But initially when I saw it, I thought, oh, it's a little Uncharted cairn. And then I think it's called not a cairn in the world or something, the trophy. But then in the last was obviously, it's a touching moment of Joel basically finding some respite in, I think, Tess's passing, which only happened like moments before. Remember this. So he's trying to seal things away.
I think about 10 miles, I think it is, something outside of Boston. So they're probably talking maybe a few, I don't know how fast people walk. It's probably half a day or something, I guess, that since Tess died.
Which is very fresh.
They're still there,
which is again, how would we cope with that? Like it's insane.
It looks like it's morning, so this is probably the next morning.
Yeah,
is how I'm kind of reading it. It looks like.
Well, we then kind of move on to after he's kind of paid his respects with his little Ken. He goes back to Ellie, who's clearly been sleeping under a tree. He's given her his jacket, and then Ellie kind of makes a statement about. He thinks she's going to apologize. He seems to constantly think that she's going to say sorry and talk about Tess, and like he cuts her off very abruptly. And I think it's interesting in this episode where they don't have Tess to communicate through. Like, Joel has no choice but to communicate with Ellie now. There's just the two of them. And straight away you can see them getting off on that foot where Ellie just wants to clearly have a conversation. And he's like, no, don't talk about it.
To be honest.
Absolutely. She says...
there's this massive cloud hanging over us. Let's just... It's almost like she's the more adult one in this situation, to be honest.
Yeah.
She's trying to clear the air. Like, we need to have this conversation whether we like it or not. Mm-hmm. And neither of us want to have it.
Yeah.
And then we can move on with whatever else we need to do.
And Joel's very just closed off. Don't want to talk about it. Let's move on. Just like he probably was with Sarah as well. And I think
he's just emotionally closed. Like,
and it's going to build up. But he said. I think Ellie says something along the lines of like, "Don't blame me for something my fault. Like you and Tess made the decisions that led us to that moment. I was just cargo in a way." And I do think underlining that though, Ellie must feel some guilt for it. Like, she's just a young girl who's watched someone who, like, arguably she did get along with Tess. Tess was fighting in her corner, and to then see her brutally be bitten and then, like, basically hold off an absolute horde of monsters so they could get away. You must have some emotional, like feeling for that. And I do think that will bubble back up to the surface maybe later on with the two of them. And I'm interested to see how that'll play out.
Weird position where she probably does feel some responsibility, but it's kind of rationalize it. Well, it's not my fault. These people took this job on. They're doing it. They've made it very clear they're doing it for their own selfish reasons. Mm-hmm. But then she's also a 14-year-old girl who probably needs a bit of support here.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to shout out.
Joel's the only person there, so it's kind of
what do you do? What do you do? I do want to shout out a couple of people in the chat just saying, Nick says, beautifully done. The actors were exceptional throughout this episode. Heartbreaking. Absolutely loved it. Jem says, the difference improvements made in the episode make me really optimistic for season 2, which, yes, we confirmed that last week. And Raven says, hey guys, so thanks for stopping by, Raven. And as they move on, they kind of have a bit of a conversation because they have to. Joel reiterates that Ellie's not allowed a gun. And they kind of come across the stash, Cumberland Farm stash point, which we live up in the northeast, Richie. We're proud of a good Cumberland sausage here and there. We discover this little market that's there, and just like the video game, there's a little stash, a little cache of goods. So Joel goes doing his scavenging, and I love this moment because Ellie straight away, as soon as she sees it, she makes a beeline for it, and we get to see the arcade machine. And I don't know about you, but I was expecting the arcade machine from the game. And we don't get that.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, all the references in the game are kind of not actual proper references. So I think this actually works a bit better than in the game because it's actually a real world thing.
Yeah, she finds the Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet, which, again, anyone who's a gamer out there, you've heard, I mean, even if you're not, you've probably heard of Mortal Kombat. It's one of the video games that uprooted the games industry and got the government involved with age ratings and stuff for ripping spines out and crazy blood on screen and such back in the 90s. And
the ESRB exists basically because of Mortal Kombat.
Essentially, Mortal Kombat footage would be what they'd show in governments and parliaments up and around the world to discuss like violence in video games and how tame it looks by today's standards, Richie. But I do appreciate this. Of course, in the video game, it's a arcade cabinet for a game called The Turning, and the featured character she talks about is Angel Knives, but because it's Mortal Kombat, she goes into Melina's character, and she goes off on this like crazy obsessive rant about eating characters and spitting their guts out and their bones, which again kind of goes back to Ellie being quite driven by violence.
She's quite sadistic.
And we see it actually in just a short while. But yeah, she's in that character. And the Left Behind DLC and this arcade cabinet in Mortal Kombat, I'm interested to see how this comes back into it in possibly the flashbacks we'll see with her good friend Riley at a later point in the series. But yeah, Mortal Kombat, epic shout out. Again, one of the famed franchises in video game history. So it's a nice nod to another franchise. Could have been Crash Bandicoot, just saying. Could have got another Naughty Dog Easter egg in here. Could have been a little Uncharted game and cabinet, Jack and Daxter.
Yeah,
but not obviously quite the same.
You could have went the Naughty Dog route, but I think by going Mortal Kombat feels like something that Ellie would be excited for, because again, what you have to remember, again, this is a 14-year-old girl who's grew up where violence is the norm, so her sadistic streak is probably like a result of her environment. Like practically everything's always been trying to kill her for her entire life.
Got to survive, nature over nature, that kind of thing. And remember, she did grow up in a FEDRA military school, so she's been taught to even though Joel won't let her use a gun, she probably knows how to use a gun. Like that's got to, you imagine, be part of her practice.
It's a military school. They're full I mean, like there's a great quote from Bill Offerman later. It's like the government are Nazis.
Oh
like,
yeah, we'll get to that.
That's the environment like Ellie's grew up in. Like.
It's terrific. So she goes in the store, she goes off to the back, and Joel has this kind of ongoing joke where she's like, is there anything going to be in here? And he always goes, just you, or any monsters, and he's like, just you. And that's 2 episodes in a row he's made that joke, so I feel like that's going to be a recurring dad joke that happens in it. It's going
to be starting like it's a bit malicious at the moment, but by the end it's kind of just playful banter.
It's just you left in there. Of course, Ellie, like most fools in horror movies, TV shows, stumbles across a hatch in like a basement hatch, and of course drops down on her own without telling Joel what she's found into an abandoned dark hole.
She checks it out though. She checks how deep it is before going in with the torch, and then she drops in.
Even if I was with you and we were exploring, just quick shout out to me.
We have a good relationship.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. But yeah, she goes into the back. She drops into the hole. She finds some tampons for the lady thing. And again, it kind of made me highlight, again, watching this with my wife, it's one of those things you don't, in a post-apocalyptic world, you don't think of the obvious things. I think an episode back, again, discussing it through, toilet paper. How much in the pandemic did we joke about toilet paper going missing from supermarkets up and down the world? And as soon as people start hoarding it, it becomes in short supply, and that creates panic. And even though the news said not to panic, when you go in there and there's barely any on the shelf, you think, maybe I won't get one or 2 rolls, maybe I'll get 4 or 5, just in case. Same thing for this. Like, this is a problem that all young girls must be going through. You go
earlier, during the pandemic, when it was like toilet paper became a like hot commodity, you'd go way earlier to buy it than you usually would. Yeah. You wouldn't wait to the last roll.
No one wants to risk that. And again, back to the female body, I kind of guess, is that, young girls within this post-apocalyptic world have an issue to deal with that men don't. And it's something that the show could have easily just replaced it with cigarettes or bandages or something standard. Yeah. And to show it again, it's like, don't shy away from the obvious things.
I wonder if there's something there, like subtly trying to point out that Joel is kind of very, very closed off. Although, bear in mind, he is a father. He had a young daughter about Ellie's age, so he was a single parent. He will have been very acutely aware of this sort of thing.
These conversations will have had to happen.
And the fact that he just doesn't even see it at the moment, just I think shows how closed he is. Yeah.
And we'll get some interesting moments. But of course, that's all disrupted. Scavenging is disrupted by a perfectly timed scare jump from an infected runner who, again, interesting, drop in the hole, make all this noise, not a thing. He waits until the perfect moment to scare the shit out of Ellie with his little clicker noise. She shines the torch over. We see him kind of caught under a bunch of rubble. Not too similar to the game, actually, when one of the first infected you meet is a guy who's been caught under some fallen debris, and he's turning into one. You kind of get to make the decision, do you leave him be? Clearly can't escape, or do we kill him and waste a bullet or something? In this case, Ellie goes closer. She's obviously curious, and like you said, she's a bit sadistic and twisted a little bit.
You have to go. It's not entirely sadism in this point, because you have to go back to like a previous conversation in the last episode with Joel, asking, when they sat down in the corridor, and she's asking her if you killed him, did any regrets, all that stuff. She's curious because like she checks with the knife first. See, it's tracking the knife. But then she cuts above the knife and just sees it's just the fungus in there. And that, I think that's her like going, is there a person still in there? Yeah. Like she's checking before she goes for the kill.
Yeah, very quickly decides as well that, nope, there certainly isn't. Knife to the head. So yeah, she cuts open his forehead, knife to the head. I just want to point out, this guy, I don't know about you, Richie, looked a bit like Ben Stiller, if I'm honest. This infected caught under the rubble.
Maybe it was Ben Stiller.
Might have been Ben Stiller, cameo that we don't know about. I do want to point out and shout out, though, the makeup prosthetics in this show.
So good.
So good. Like, that is such a close-up, and if you pause on that screen, you can see kind of fungal things behind the ears, like pustules and mushroom glands and stuff, and this is all real like, I'm sure there's some elements of touch-up with CGI, but for the most part it's real-world makeup, and the team behind it's the same people who did Chernobyl, and they did things in House of Dragon and stuff as well, so this is like an acclaimed production studio for this kind of thing, and if they don't win all the kinds of awards by the end of the year,
that's why I think it looks so good, because it is so much done practically, and then the CGI will be there just for touch-ups, so it doesn't look fake.
Yeah.
Well, I think if it's all CGI, it does always kind of have this kind of fake look to it.
Looks almost like a video game, but it's not just a video game, so it stands out even more. But yeah, so Ellie kills the infected, goes back up in the room, and doesn't even mention to Joel. So she's just killed an infected man, possibly the first one she's ever killed herself, and she keeps that to herself. And this is a game where we start to see, even though they're on this journey together, they are not in an open communication relationship right now. They're both keeping everything to themselves, and whether that comes back and gets them
together yet.
No, they're not on the same page quite yet. They continue their journey anyway. They come across an aeroplane site where we kind of see Ellie kind of get excited again about flight and stuff that she's not witnessed in her life before. And Joel complains about, I think, the sandwich costs or the price for a ticket. Yeah. Which, again, we've both been on flights in the last year, and Colossia, air travel is not cheap. But I wouldn't complain about it if the world ended. And then, Joel, I think, makes a joke about saying, they also got to fly, the people who are in the ruin, the wreckage. Of course, don't think this of course wasn't the same plane from, I was going to say the first episode, but they're in a totally different part of the state.
Completely different part of the US.
Yeah. Which leads Ellie to, I guess, go on to the conversation about saying, did all the planes crash at once? And Joel kind of emphasizes that, it's an outbreak day. Everything went to shit over the course of a weekend. Ellie jokes about it being monkeys, I think, which was an interesting little take, because there are monkeys in the video game for a very small segment.
It is. It's also a nod to other horror franchises where, like, zombie viruses have just kind of like transferred from monkey bites, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we get kind of a little nod there. See that reference how you want. Planet of the Apes taking over, whatever it may be. But it gives us kind of the clearest time we see Joel essentially explain to Ellie like what happened. Like, we get confirmation pretty much laid out in front of us of it was flour or sugar, it's bread, baked goods, products. He pauses a little bit on pancakes because, of course, that's what Sarah was going to make him on his birthday. And we just kind of get explained. Ellie's just kind of, maybe it's not monkeys then. Something so simple. And then he kind of just lays the scene, which, again, odd she wasn't taught this kind of stuff in the school she was at. But as she said in episode 2, shit school, so...
But why would they care at this point? It's happened. Like, she's at a military school. Do they really care about teaching the history? Because they're very, like, FEDRA, very jackboot thugs, kind of, like... They're training people to be soldiers, brainwashing them into just doing horrific acts and just believing this is the only way things can survive. This is the only way good things can happen. We saw in the first episode, quite just mercilessly just euthanizing young children. Even if it was in some way the kind thing to do, it didn't feel very kind. It felt very business-like the way they approached it.
Absolutely. And speaking of not very kind, we see Joel kind of want to direct Ellie along a different pathway. I thought it was going to be a case of let's get off the road because it's not safe travelling on the road. Ring wraiths and that are out there if you stay on the road for too long. Yeah. But the reason being is eventually Ellie kind of powers ahead and says, if it can't kill me, we'll be fine. To only stumble across, essentially, Richie, a mass grave of skeletons.
Well, I thought this was going to be, because in the game, Joel mentions that he's done some pretty dark shit. I thought this was going to be somewhere where he personally had been involved in some atrocity.
Right.
But it just turns out this was just a FEDRA thing.
Yeah, I clicked kind of what it was going to be as soon as she kind of stops by the roadside, and you've not heard any noises yet. They're still out in the open, and in my brain I'm thinking, what else could it be? And it gives me like very Schindler's List vibes immediately, and I guess any kind of mass grave represents genocide in some way.
It's what I expected, but I expected it would be more attributed to Joel. Like, a bit more, and like this is more Joel protecting himself and like the horrible stuff he's done. He doesn't want Ellie prying into it.
Yeah.
Where this seems to be more of Joel being a bit of a dad, actually.
Yeah. He doesn't want a 14-year-old girl.
He doesn't want this young girl seeing this horrible stuff.
Yeah. And no surprise, because it's absolutely harrowing. We see the clothes blowing in the wind and just this mass grave of bodies. And then he explains to her that these people weren't infected sometimes. If there wasn't room in the QZ zone, FEDRA would just basically kill them. And that you kind of see that one moment where Ellie is taken aback by it, and Joel kind of solidifies the shame in it all by saying dead people can't get infected. Yeah, which is true, and it is that kind of thought process of, if we leave these people out here, they get bit inevitably. That's more infected out there. They become a threat, a risk to the people in the quarantine zone, and then it's humanity at its worst, really, at the same time.
I think this scene was probably about reminding the audience about FEDRA.
Yeah.
That, yes, they are the government, but these are not good. This is not good times. Like, they've done some absolute atrocities, and reminding people that they are kind of the villains a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Where we haven't seen FEDRA at all since episode 1.
Very true.
And we haven't, we've seen like a bit of it. It's just kind of like replanting the seed a bit, growing that seed.
That governments can't be trusted. And then we finally get our cold open, which is, it happens 20 years in the past. So we had our outbreak day on episodes 1 and 2, taking place 20 years ahead of time, and then we have the credits introed, and then we cut to the show. This time, after all of this introduction with Joel and Ellie, we then cut back 20 years to September 30th, 2023, aka, I think, just after the outbreak day. I think Joel actually dates it. I think he says like 29th of September or 26th of September.
Which is very important, actually, that date. Mm-hmm. If you've seen any of the official podcasts and stuff, that date predates, I think, Michigan passing a law to allow gay marriage, which I think was the first state in the US to do it.
You're correct.
It predated it by a few months, so that date is very important for the characters of Bill and Frank.
That is a very good point, yes, because we land on September 30th, not too long after Outbreak Day, in a small town, and we see the civilians essentially from the pit of bodies in their real body counterparts. 20 years earlier, we see them being escorted onto military trucks. You see them painting red crosses on the door, Richie, which immediately invokes kind of plague methodology of just like putting a cross on doors, bubonics everywhere from a year back in the old days. We see Bill observing them through the CCTV, and of course, I'll let you say the line because I know you want to say it.
Oh, what was the line? Oh, jackboot thugs.
Yeah, not today.
All right, not today, you New World Order jackboot fucks.
I give it to you and you ruin the delivery of it. But
I know I did.
We get Nick, and the most Nick Offerman line you can essentially want Nick Offerman to read out.
Originally, wasn't a line to be delivered. It was just advice to Nick, the actor, to go, this is what the character's thinking.
Yeah.
Nick Offerman insisted.
Yeah, Nick Offerman is just... So if anyone's not seen his work before, of course, he's fantastic in Parks and Recreation as Ron Swanson, but I love how Nick Offerman in real life is very much just a down-to-earth woodsman. I think I saw an interview with him this week with him and the gentleman who plays Frank, Murray Bartlett, talking about like how they got the role, the characters. And one of the questions asked by the audience was, what would you do if you weren't an actor? And Nick Offerman's role is literally, I would carve wood. I would carve small boats and ornaments of wood. And it's like...
Would you like to see my workshop?
Yeah, he literally is that character embodied. So it's nice to see
Parks
it.
And Rec, I think there's a scene where, like, in the first season where he like builds a canoe. Mm-hmm. He built that canoe.
Yeah.
The actor built the canoe. He's just like, that trope of what Ron Swanson came from Nick Offerman.
Mm-hmm. And it works. It fits, and it fits into this character of Bill as well, because we get to see it fantastic. So he comes out of his basement within a basement almost. The military trucks have left, and he kind of has a little cheeky smile, and then we get this wonderful musical montage with kind of guitar music playing over the top, basically demonstrating how resourceful Bill is. He's I think Joel asks him later in the show, it's like, oh, you're a prepper? And he says, no, I'm a survivalist. And he corrects him, and then he basically goes around town, he gets all the gas from the local petrol stations. I'm trying to say gas because I'm aware it's in America. We've got some American viewers.
He does the cheap stuff.
I mean, it's all free, right?
Buys.
Yeah, he does. It takes all the fuel. He goes to Home Depot, I guess B&Q for those in the UK. Takes everything. Which again, I nudged the wife immediately when that was one of my plans. That's my zombie apocalypse plan: is get straight to the Home Depot, B&Q hardware store, get all of the tools required, all the sharp implements, the hardware that I need to fortify our home base, Richie. He goes to turn the gas back on, so the power cuts out, and he goes and immediately. It shows you he's an intelligent man. What did you theorize was maybe his profession in life? Because if he knows how to turn on the gas at a proper power plant, he must have some kind of engineering acumen.
There's a lot of hints where I think he's probably actually unemployed, and he is this kind of like deep state, like conspiracy theorist, like survivalist, doomsday prepper kind of guy, like. Socially awkward, so it's probably not going to be. But he's learned all of these skills off his own back. He's learned the knowledge. He spent all of his time acquiring these knowledge and skills, expecting something like this. Probably not through a pandemic. Probably not through zombies.
Yeah.
Probably just through like military movement, and that's probably he's just built the skill set that he knows he needs to survive. And he's clearly had a very clear plan of how he's going to do this. So when they came, he was in his basement, but is in his bunker, which is beneath his basement, which means he wouldn't get found. That's not clearly planned. He's got security cameras up, so he's waiting for the opportunity, and he's very do this. It's very scripted.
Yeah, he has a plan. Yeah. He has a post-apocalypse plan. He has a electricity power generator out the back of his garden under a big tarpaulin sheet. He's shown cutting trees down, building a perimeter fence, digging holes, setting traps, growing vegetables. He's got chickens. He's got meat hung up in his larder. He's essentially self-sufficient within this small 100%. Town that he's guarded off. And this is Bill's town now.
This is the man who just doesn't fit in with the world. And not... just probably because of his political views, because he's a gay man who seemingly you don't know. It's never explicitly stated that he's in the closet, but he's not fully out of it either. It's just he doesn't quite. He feels like he doesn't fit in with the world. He resents the world.
Yeah,
he's 100% a single person survivalist and quite content.
Yeah, because we of course see once he's kind of created this Bill's town environment that's safe, secure. It's his own. Pardon me. He's then basically created this environment where he can sit down, enjoy a gorgeous-looking steak dinner, and just watch infected basically be killed. Is it rabbit? Oh no, I thought it was steak. Rabbit. No, when he eats on his own. I thought it was rabbit he prepares.
Yeah, because
he's kind of he has the meat hung up in the larder, and he kind of cooks this big fillet, and then he's sat eating it on his own, and then he hears his he sees the buzzer go off, and he checks it with kind of like his TV remote and switches over to HBO Max and sees a infected's head just basically get exploded on one of his booby traps. Which again, he must just spend all day watching these clickers and runners just come into his perimeter area and just see his traps just in action. And there must be. I think he actually sits back at one point and goes, "Never gets old."
Yeah,
because so he is just in this again single mind environment where he's had no human interaction. This is
what he's always dreamed of.
It's a prepper's dream, I guess, to put in your prepping work to good practice and see it come to its fruition of years of hoarding canned goods and bullets. And let's admit, his ammo rack is fantastic. He's definitely leaning into the Second Amendment with that collection he has down in his basement. There must be about 50 weapons on display there, which Ellie takes a shining to later on in the show. But yeah, we see him sit back, he's chuckling, he's got his wine, his steak dinner. He's loving life. He's loving his life on his own.
He's free to cook for me whenever he wants.
Absolutely. Fast forward, 4 years later, we get a bit of a time jump here. 2007, so we're a few years on from the outbreak day now, and the perimeter alarm goes off again. This time, though, there's a man in a hole, Richie.
In a pit.
In a pit. A pit that he dug.
Which I wonder, was this a bit of a Parks and Rec reference?
It might be. If he'd have said pit, I think explicitly, and then I think if Frank said I fell in the pit, that would have been a direct nod. In the actual
Last of Us podcast, they do call it a pit.
Yeah, there must be something in there. Then it's not actually. It's quite frustrating, the official podcast, because they don't go in depth as I feel like I want them to.
Yeah.
I just like, tell me more about your thought process behind this. Again, if you don't listen to the official podcast, go check that out. I know ours is fantastic. Some would say the best.
To the ClickerCast.
It really is. But yes, he approaches, he goes out. We kind of get a showcase of how good his perimeter fence is. It's all armed. It's got codes on. He's got a remote control to unlock certain things. He's done his work. He goes out armed with a pistol. He shouts in the hall, "Are you armed?" We get a long pause, and then I think he says no after about a 3-second wait. And he's like, "Why did you wait so long to answer?" And Frank gives some kind of explanation of, "I was going to make up a lie, but then nothing came to me." So, and it makes off this
I was thinking
comedic.
About lying. I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah, which again sets a really comedic tone and beat between the two of these characters as they're introduced in such what potentially could have been such a hostile scenario. Like, let's face it, like in any other scenario where a human is encroaching on your perimeter fence, and the way Bill is, he could just shot him dead straight away without a thought in the world. But he doesn't. They have that little conversation. He introduces him. He gets him to climb out. He tags him with one of the FEDRA scanners, which there is a whole story in how did he acquire that. I think Frank asks him, like, where did you get that from? So Bill's, I guess, traded it with Joel and Tess, maybe. Oh no, they've not met them yet at this stage.
No, they haven't met them.
So he's found one somehow through hook or by crook.
He's acquired one at some point.
Maybe an infected FEDRA agent walked into the fence.
It doesn't seem like the sort of guy at this point in time who would maybe trade with a FEDRA soldier.
I don't think he's seen a human in 4 years. Another human.
Apart from probably the FEDRA soldier, he probably had to kill.
Yeah. Jem in the chat says he found one in a loot box. Could do.
Yeah,
it might be a video game world after all out there. Frank explains where he's came from, the Baltimore QZ, which he says is no more. So again, setting the tone for what we're probably going to experience in next week's episode, that these quarantine zones that are controlled essentially by what's left of the government, they don't function well across the country. Like, some do, some don't, and we'll probably see that throughout the season a little bit more.
It was planted in the last episode where, like, talking to Ellie is like, about the bomb situations, like, some of them work, some of it didn't. Boston is surprisingly one of the good ones. Mm-hmm. Despite what we've seen of Boston, it's like, this is actually probably one of the better situations going on. Yeah,
absolutely. And then we get a nice bit of comedy. I think this is, again, Nick Offerman, fantastic comedic actor. I think you and me spoke about before the show started, saying how comedic actors translate over to drama really, really well. And I love that they give him a couple of like lighter tone notes to have. And I think Bill comments and saying, if I give you food, if I let you in for a meal, because Frank hasn't eaten for 2 days, every bum is going to turn up.
Doesn't seem that long though.
No.
Say out loud.
Every bum is going to turn up looking for a free lunch, and this is not an Arby's. And I think Frank says, Arby's didn't do free lunch, it was a restaurant. And you get that pause moment where you see their eyes lock, you get the joke, you're like, oh yeah, he's kind of right, shit, my point doesn't make sense anymore. And I don't even know what an Arby's is, Richie, because we don't have them in the UK. I guess it's some just kind of like a fast food restaurant. Yeah. I did see Arby's tweet out this week the Last of Us HBO show, so they must have got confirmation they could use Arby's, because I guess you could just trade it it could have been Starbucks, it could have been anything, McDonald's.
It could mean any major chain.
Yeah.
Like in America, that would have made sense.
But it does work, and again, it sets the tone for these two meeting of minds, how there's some intelligence. Like, Frank immediately shows some intelligence by not just, like, he's got a gun in his face, and he's still smart enough to say, well, you're kind of wrong there. I know I get what you're saying, but at the same time...
It's probably a little disarming, because, like, you're pointing a gun at this guy, and he's just kind of just making a joke. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Frank... can almost see that Bill's not as serious as maybe, although he's defensive, he's got these pits and electric fences up, there's something about him which you can almost tell he's not a cold-hearted killer. He's got a gun, but he's not giving off that vibe, he's going to shoot me dead if I so much as move.
Again, this is getting into the whole dynamic between Frank and Bill, but Frank has this thing where he can just see straight through past the surface of what Bill is, to see what the man is underneath it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like, he's immediately kind of pegging, like, there's more to this guy than just this hardcore survivalist out on his own.
Yeah, and Hungry Moogle in the chat says, comedy is tragedy plus time. And Raven points out that Arby's is famous for their roast beef sandwiches. So but he doesn't quite cook him roast beef. We do see Frank kind of disarm himself after he's made that joke, and they have a bit of eye contact and a little kind of inner chuckle with each other. He kind of puts his arms down at that point, and he's like, "Look, I'm starving. Can we have some food?" And yeah, he kind of says, like, he invites him in. We cut to, I think he has a shower. Bill brings him some clothes, and no surprise, Frank wants more time in the shower. Like, my word, he's probably not had a hot shower in 4 or 5 years at this point. Yeah, so he asks for 10 more minutes.
You can imagine in the QZ, there's probably showers, but you've probably got FEDRA soldiers stood there. It's probably a cold shower.
20 seconds. Get out.
In. Rinse. Scrub. In. Next. Kind of like, you get probably 2 minutes or something.
So he enjoys
cold
that.
Water, but, yeah.
And then Frank, of course, Bill prepares him a lovely meal as Frank walks around the house. Notice the house is quite dusty still, which clearly Bill's had this house, but not maintaining it.
Very generous of Bill, this, because, okay, he's taken him in to give him some food. He could have easily, like, we know this, he's like this kind of doomsday prepper. He's probably got some tins of beans lying around. He could have went, there you go.
Give him some of that jerky that Joel and Tess seem to chew on every week.
He could have given him just, like, anything. Just like, look, here's a tin of beans.
Be on your way.
I'll crack it open for you.
Yeah.
Here's a spoon. Don't repair the spoon. Just off you go.
He didn't even have to let him in. He could have said, wait at the gate and I'll get you
I will give you something to eat, but you leave. But no, he brings him this like gourmet.
He does, yeah. He sets him down
with a wine pairing.
Yeah, a beautiful dining room, wine pairing, beautifully prepared meal. I think Frank comments on something. A man who knows how to pair a rabbit with I don't know how to pronounce the name of the wine. Is it Bouillolis or something? Terrible.
I'll get up in the
Bouillolis. It's a French wine, I'd imagine, just by the pronunciation of the name.
Is it Beaujolais?
Beaujolais. That reads better. That just shows you how bad my French is.
A man who knows to pair rabbit with a Beaujolais.
Beaujolais.
I know I don't seem the type.
Yeah, and then Frank says, "Oh no, you do." And then again, this is where we see Frank start to see through the layers. In a very disarming
way, again, just like straight through, past the surface.
Yeah, so they finish up the delicious meal. Frank can't eat another bite, and then we kind of get that. Frank's been admiring the grand piano sat in Bill's house for so long. I think he says something about, oh, what year? 1948. And he's like, oh, wow, do you know how much these are worth? And I love Nick Offerman's line again of just like, currently nothing. Because the world's gone to shit. So yeah, piano means jack shit in today's world. Like, food is, I guess, the only currency in bullets that seem to count. And again, to talk about going through like the layers of this relationship, I think we learn about Bill essentially says that the music belonged to his mother, which kind of leads into his character. It seems that he probably cared for his mother in some way, and the house was left to him, and that's why he's been closed off.
This is kind of why I was saying, like, he's probably not employed off. He is. It's not. Because everything around this house screams elderly woman, not middle-aged man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a writer's chest, I think, is one of the things in the house.
Yeah, and it's not been looked after. There's dust everywhere, despite the fact this is a man, clearly he can grow his own vegetables. He knows how to build an electric fence, plus all these traps. He knows how to play the piano. He knows how to cook amazing dinner. He's got the domestic skills. There's no doubt about that. It's a choice that he's not looked after the place, really.
Yeah. And we all have friends like that, right? Who've got lovely homes, but sometimes the upkeep is just it takes a little while. And clearly Frank is looking around thinking, got this beautiful house, this beautiful town, and it's left to decay and slowly rot. And in a weird way, it's kind of representative of Bill in a way. He's there, he's physically stable, but he is just on his own, left to rot and decay until I guess old age would eventually take him. And that's where we start to see.
He's existing.
He exists. That's all he does. They sit down at the piano. He kind of goes through some of the musical books. And he's like, this isn't you. And you can almost see Frank poking away at who Bill is by. It's like looking through someone's CD collection or the vinyl records collection of. You get a taste for who they are based on their musical tastes.
I think after dinner, everything Frank does is about getting Bill to kind of admit openly about who he is as a person.
Yeah.
And everything's like, oh yeah, I'm interested in the piano. And he's looking at the music and he's like, yeah, this is more you. Like, and plays a song that he thinks is like, you know, like Bill's kind of dismissive, oh yeah, it was my mother's. And Frank's like, no, Not buying it.
I am buying it. Yeah, absolutely. And then he settles on a song, Linda Ronstadt's "Long, Long Time," which the episode is named after, from 1970. And he basically is like, I'm going to play this song right now. And you've got to remember, we spoke about how much he enjoyed the food and the wine. He's probably also not heard music in potentially 4+ years. Like, since Outbreak Day, music it's not a necessity. It's not a survival requirement. So these people in these quarantine zones, we joke about the shower, but at the same time, they've probably not heard any music, like actual creative music, in 4+ years, which we take it for granted that we have Spotify and stuff nowadays. But yeah, go live in a forest for 4 years and you'd probably like really, really cherish those precious things like song. And long, long time. He sits down, he sings it. Just to read out a few of the lyrics to give a bit of context for why this song was chosen for this episode in this particular moment. I'm not going to sing it for you all, by the way. Richie, take it away.
Sing.
No. I barely do a clicker impression on this show. I'm not going to sing. Love will abide, take things in stride. Sounds like good advice, but there's no one at my side. And time washes clean, love's wounds unseen. That someone told me, but I don't know what that means. Because I've done everything I know to try and make you mine. And I think I'm going to love you for a long, long time. And of course, Frank butchers the song. You can almost see Bill's like kind of visibly reeling back from like how bad he's performing this track, and then Bill steps in and goes, "Look, I'll take over."
There's this thing I know. The actor Murray Bartlett apparently is actually a really good pianist and singer. Mm-hmm. So he was intentionally trying to play poorly, like someone who's good trying to play poorly, and it works. Like I wonder is the character doing that as well? Is the character just a bad singer, bad pianist? Or is he intentionally trying to
to bait him out
a bit? Baiting him again, just like, I'm going to do this poorly. Mm-hmm. So Bill goes, I'm going to show you how it's done. He sees that like thing in them. Is like, that one thing is like, okay, like, because he kind of goes, well, one song and I'll go. Like, yeah,
Bill's kind of character as well reminds me of someone. If you were doing something physical like chopping wood or more, or like, I don't know, digging a hole or something like that, if you started it, he'd watch you for about 2 minutes and then go, get out the way, I'll do it, because he's such a perfectionist in what he does. Like, and we saw that in the meal preparation, that butchering a song which is clearly important to him, doesn't like it. Bill takes over, sits down, cracks his knuckles, delivers a much more beautiful rendition of the song. And then this is where you kind of see those moments of Frank really starting to admire this guy for who he is. He asks about the end, so who's the girl you're singing about? Because the lyrics, of course,
the last confirmation.
He suspects, but he wants to do it. He puts his hand on his shoulder, I think, who's the girl you're singing about? And Bill says, there is no girl. And he knows now.
It's a last confirmation for Frank, but it's also a last opportunity for Bill to deny who he is. Is like, who's the girl? Bill could have lied, and Frank probably would have walked off, and that would have been it.
That would have been the parting of ways.
I'm giving you now, if you just, all you need to do is answer this question, then we both know. Yeah.
And he does give him confirmation. And then, Frank leans in and they share a kiss. And again, back to first of many, but when was the last time either of these two had human contact? Like, we joked about the shower. We mentioned about the amazing food, the sound of music, and then actual human contact. Like, Bill has lived on his own for 4 years. Frank has obviously seen a lot of shit. I think he was part of a group of 10 people, but we don't know what his experience was. So to have any kind of intimacy, let alone with, we don't know what the state of the world is like post-apocalyptic.
It's just the way it is. Like, Bill's initially a little guarded, but as soon as a kiss, he very much leans right into it.
Oh, absolutely.
He's been holding this back for his entire life.
Quite potentially. And as you mentioned, when the world went to shit, gay marriage, gay relationships were not accepted in this society. I mean, accepted, but they weren't legally by the government endorsed, that kind of thing. So the fact that they've had an entire world go to shit, and then somehow they found each other in this beautiful moment with the piano and the music and the song and the meal and everything, it's clearly locked in. And Frank tells him to go have a shower. They go upstairs.
He asked him his name first.
Yeah, he said all this. They've fallen in love almost immediately without
what's your name?
Even knowing your name. Yeah,
go take a shower, Bill.
Go take a shower, Bill, because you clearly probably haven't cleaned the house, showered in a while. I mean, if you live on your own, you're going to have a shower.
Like, pulled.
Yeah. Upstairs, has a shower. Frank waits for him in the bed. And then they have this again, intimate moment where I think Frank can kind of see, and I think he asks him, he says, is this your first time? And he says he once with a girl many, many years ago. And as you said, this is a guy who's clearly lived on his own, not interacted with many humans, even before the apocalypse. And Frank kind of guides him through essentially what might be his first intimate relationship possibly ever.
Probably is.
And then we cut away, and of course, like all relationships, we fast forward 3 years ahead to 2010. They're arguing. He kicks the door open. Frank's on the way out. They're shouting at each other. And what's it all about, Richie? Frank wants to just do the area up. He wants to cut the grass, paint the fence, do a little bit of decorating, and they are full-blown relationship mode right now, at each other's throats over the pettiest of things. And I think it's a fantastic skip forward in time.
So it's such a from this very tender moment of the two men about to make love, and then just in the streets bellowing at each other.
Yeah, what the?
Clearly, there's a miscommunication. It's just down to a miscommunication. Bill's like, why do you need to do this? What? It's it's not for me, it's for us.
Yeah, he's trying to explain it again. I don't want to go too much into it, but me and the wife, when she's got such a simple thing she wants me to do, and my thick head just isn't getting it. And it's there's a reason behind this. There's a reason we want to do this, and my brain just doesn't keep up. And then it goes, oh, I get it now. Anyone out there in relationships, you know what I'm talking about. You know what Bill and Frank are going through.
It's in the scene you get amazing things Frank's going on about, your psycho bunker and 9/11's inside job and the government's all Nazis. And Bill's like, the government are all Nazis. Yeah, now.
that is a fantastic line.
But they weren't before.
Again, highlighting FEDRA. And again, when you look at the comparisons, big ditch full of bodies, killing innocent people who weren't necessarily a bullet to the head, giant camps and stuff. There's a lot of real world mirrored in this, but that's a fantastic line. That you crazy conspiracy theory nut. And again, that's where the arguing just kind of transcends into just you're arguing for your argument's sake at this point.
But it's funny.
It's that element, those elements of comedy which just really emphasize it. And again, the best line Frank delivers next is Bill just takes a breath and says, explain it to me again. And Frank says, paying attention to things is how we show love. And that's again kind of cements the kind of underlining tone of the whole episode, I think, which is showing attention to something, caring for someone, loving someone is how we show love. That's how we do it. And that goes back to the house. He wants to look after the environment, the neighborhood. And then I love once as Bill kind of agrees to go along with it, he's right, I've got a plan. I want the boutique, I want the wine shop done up, I want the grass cut, I want the paint done. It's and that's where I can just see Bill, like every other person in a relationship, just goes, what have I got myself in for? I've got years of responsibility. That's the one where you go,
you know what? Do it.
Yeah, you do it. You do things for the people that you love.
Is this going to make you happy? Yep, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Frank declares that they're going to have friends over. And I love how this kind of scene ends with him saying, I've actually been talking to a nice woman on the radio, and Bill just goes back to flipping out angry again. It's like, you what? You've been doing what? And then, it cuts again to another scene.
Again, you have to remember, Bill's role in this relationship is, to protect them, and, Frank's just like, what? You talking, you letting people know that we exist. People not existing is probably the thing that keeps them the safest.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, one's the protector, one's the carer, essentially, in this, and you love to see it. We cut ahead, presumably a little bit in time, to them having friends, and we see Bill and Frank joined by a younger Joel and Tess. So, again, I don't know whether this is de-aging. This confused me a bit, because I don't really know how old or young Pedro Pascal really is, because I know him from Game of Thrones, but then seeing him in this, I'm like, damn, he looks really young. But then in The Mandalorian, he has a helmet on the whole time. And I don't know what the real Pedro Pascal looks like, is what I'm saying.
I think in this scene is probably his actual age. And they've aged him up a bit and aged him down a bit as required.
Hungry Moogle says around 52, so...
Looks good for a 52-year-old. But there again, Pedro Pascal hasn't been through all the shit that Joel has.
Yeah, he hasn't had his head crushed before, or had to swear his allegiance to the Mandalorian law. Yeah. This is the way. But yes, they have their little kind of garden tea party, which Frank's probably absolutely adored and loved. And I absolutely think it's brilliant the fact that Bill just has his gun out at the table the whole time.
His hand on it the whole time.
Yeah, he's just sat there. They're all having like their afternoon tea and sharing scones and jam and everything. And he's just got his hand on his gun facing Joel the whole time. Which, again, back to Bill's mindset. Like, he doesn't want anyone in his his perimeter. Like, he's allowed Frank to come in. And now Frank's trying to kind of change him into this like person who's willing to speak to other humans. And Joel, again, Bill just must be on edge thinking they could just like kill us both and take everything we've got in a heartbeat.
Yeah, there's a classic, like, again, relationship lines, like when they're at the table, Bill's got his hand on his gun, Frank just looks over, can you not, please?
Yeah, it's almost like get your elbows down. Like, stop.
You're in trouble with your spouse.
Yeah,
it's one of them
stop
things.
chewing your food so loud, put your drink on a coaster, all of those kind of like typical table manner related things. But yeah, he's just got a pistol at the table, ready to pop off at any moment.
We've got this like nice meal, like these potentially nice guests will potentially become good friends or business partners. We've got a nice bottle of wine, and you're just pointing the gun at them the whole time.
Yeah, and that comes kind of back around. The two of them, Frank and Tess, head off into the house, and I think Joel, and it's almost, again, if anyone's ever been out on like a double date, two of the members of the couples leave, and then you're left with the two people who maybe don't know each other as much. And here we get Bill and Joel essentially having to sit opposite each other awkwardly at a table. Do they get to know each other? Who makes the conversation? Bill's the host, but he doesn't want Joel to be there, and you do get this funny standoff where Joel's kind of finishing, obviously, probably the best food he's had in ages. And he kind of...
ever.
Yeah.
Joel wasn't a wealthy man.
No, he couldn't even have pancakes for breakfast, for God's sake. And then, we see him kind of lay out the trade deal to say, like, look, Frank and Tess clearly have a plan and idea. I understand you're defensive. I'm defensive too. But Joel sees the benefit in the smuggler's kind of route that he tries to plot out.
It's this thing where Joel, he immediately understands what sort of man Bill is, and he's already taken away the surroundings and by able to go, look, your fence is on the way out. That'll need fixing. This and obviously there's stuff like I can give you an aluminium spool that'll enough to last.
Don't you mean aluminum?
Lives. Playing on the Frank cards, like he clearly goes, you're here, your main focus is on protecting Frank. Mm-hmm. This is going to go down unless you look after it. I can give you what you need to look after it. It's like basically speaking this language. And I think that's the fact that Joel's picked up on stuff like that probably Frank isn't even aware of.
I think Frank's a bit taken aback that he's almost called him out for, he knows he's not there he's not into the tea parties and speaking to strangers, but as soon as he calls out the fence, he kind of calls his bluff and goes, oh shit, I will need to do something about that if he wants to keep protecting the people he loves.
Bill's probably already aware of it. Probably Frank isn't. Mm-hmm. The fact that Joel's come in is immediately aware of it. I think that's just like one of them things that like starts getting like Bill's respect, basically. It's like,
we think the same. You get it, absolutely.
You've took stock of the surroundings as you walked in here before you sat down to eat with me.
Yeah.
And you just give me this information for free.
Yeah. And at the same time, it could underline...
And give me a solution to the problem.
An error in Bill's ways of like, oh shit, if he can come in and see my defences are already weakening, then, again, you go back to defending the ones you love, and he thinks about for Frank, and immediately that gets them on the same page in a weird way. But I do love that line where Joel's like, and get the gun out of my face. I think he's like delivering mid-sentence. He's like, oh, we can definitely both help each other and get the gun out of my face. And Frank's like, okay, I'm sorry. I get it now. Like, it's a bit of a rude gesture. We cut ahead to them doing kind of laps, how they stay fit in their little town. Bill can't keep up. He's getting old. But then they do reach a lovely strawberry patch. And Frank explains to him that he traded some seeds with Tess and Joel and for a small gun. There's almost that moment where Bill almost goes back into argument mode, where he's like, what gun?
One guns, just the little ones. Like, oh.
You can immediately see him in his head checking his whole inventory of which gun's missing.
This is like 10 years later, they got at this point, isn't it?
No, this is still at shortly after the end.
Is it?
So we haven't cut ahead yet. So they have the strawberry moment. They have a really... kind of just a sweet moment where, again, back to everything where, like, if you love something, they've probably not had strawberries in, at this point, 7 years in the timeline. Like, if you can't get your hands on strawberries, they don't just appear out of nowhere. So the fact that they traded with the seeds, and Frank did it as a nice gesture for Bill, and again, we don't know, Bill might have been a massive strawberry lover, and he's just not had them for nearly a decade. So it's a touching moment.
He's into his food. Mm-hmm. He's massively into his food to the point where he can cook, like, gourmet, like, Michelin star level meals. So something like a strawberry, which is kind of like, it's got symbolic with romance as well. The kind of fruit, like as a fruit, it's very much a luxury fruit.
Yep. Lovely.
So it's like, yeah, it's a nice gesture.
And we get, of course, Nick Offerman's giggle in this moment when he eats a strawberry, which, again, that's his real laugh, by the way, the little giggle he eats when he eats a strawberry. That is Nick Offerman, the actor's real world laugh. That's not put on for the show or the character. That is him. So it was nice to get that in there as he enjoyed it. And they have a really touching moment about just, again, shared passions for for all things. And then, we cut away to nighttime. We get a shot from outside the fence, and then we get the raiders attack Richie. So this is what Joel warned them of. This is what they always knew might happen. Raiders arrive at the camp. We see the traps start to go off. We see fire outside. Frank wakes up in the bed, and there's just Bill's not there. Things going on. He hears explosions. He runs down, gets his gun out of his own little kind of right at his chest, and then heads outside to see Bill basically with a rifle shooting at the fence.
Imagine being Frank in this situation. You know all the stuff. You know the world's going to shit out there, but you've spent the last, like, maybe 7 years in relative security. Like, you've seen probably traps go off here and there as walkers, like, come across them. Walkers, runners, clickers, whatever, things. But you've never been attacked. You've never seen, like, the entire fence ignite while you're trying to sleep.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Bill kind of doesn't brief Frank on any of this. He's like, no, you look after me, I look after you in my own way, which is very much with weapons and amazing defense systems, by the way. Like, he's essentially looks like he's got, like, stone grinders rigged to gas pipes to trigger explosions of fire, which is fantastic.
He's basically got a ring of flamethrowers set up in front of an electric fence.
Yeah. Pretty good.
Which makes you wonder, why is he out in the street with a sniper rifle right in the middle of the street? It seems an unnecessary risk.
He could have took more cover. He really could have took more cover.
Any cover.
Yeah.
Like, he could have hit behind the garden wall. He could have... They don't know where he is.
Yeah.
He could have just been in one of the buildings from the roof.
Yeah.
Or something.
Slight chink in the armour with that one. A literal chink in the armour. He doesn't have a bulletproof vest at all either. I'm sure he could have sourced one of them from his many, many years. But again, we nitpick at that particular point. Yeah. I think as video gamers, especially when you play things, you always take cover. Duck and hide. Duck and, like, pop up and weave.
I suppose, I think it might be one of them things where, although he is a prepper, he's not actually a soldier.
Mm-hmm. That's true, yeah.
You
can have all these things.
It might be just a bit of arrogance from him. He thinks he's better than he is, like, in the situation.
He may be. He might have had 3 med kits in his pack. He might have had all of the ammo saved up, all those grenades and smoke bombs, and just never used them. Never used them, did he, Richie? Anyway, Frank shouts at him. He tells him to get in the house. And, of course, Frank being his only weakness is essentially the thing that gets him shot. He turns his back to Frank, away from the attacking raiders, and he immediately gets shot through the back. Exit wound through his stomach. Frank helps him. They get into the house. Bill starts to get a little bit delirious. Frank's trying to kind of put alcohol on the wound, and immediately Bill goes in.
Whiskey probably is like
probably good quality. And Bill immediately starts to kind of say, "You need looking after. Get in touch with Joel. He's basically got his death plan.
Through his list,
his list of death plans. All the keys are cloned. Just contact Joel. Joel will look after you. And then he passes out on Call Joel. And I don't know about you. Did you think Bill died there and then? Because they pause on the black for quite a while. As you see his eyes. His eyes are open. He doesn't shut his eyes. The visibly end on his eyes being wide open, which is usually a sign you've died.
I think that's what the showrunners wanted me to think. But I'm still thinking at this point in time that Ellie and Joel are going to get to Billstown to meet up with Bill. Things are going to go wrong. You're still going to get that upside down scene. Joel gets caught in one of Bill's traps or something. I thought that might have been what would have happened next in the next scene, where Joel gets to the Billstown, see things have decayed, like kind of like what's happened to Frank. Because at this point we don't know about. Yeah, we've seen a bit of the relationship, but we don't know how it's going to end up.
That's true.
So I'm thinking, like, is this the point where the relationship turns and goes the way it does in the game? That is still on the cards in my mind. So I thought, no, Bill's going to survive this, but Frank isn't. maybe.
Yeah, you'd imagine Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin had lots of conversations of how they want to weave the characters together, because at one point we know they're going to overlap. Joel and Ellie will meet Bill and Frank, but at what stage? And we keep having these time jumps getting closer and closer. But yeah, Joel and Tess could have showed up to help fight the Raiders at that point, and he says, call Joel. So we don't know what's really going to happen, but in the chat I can see a couple of people. Hungrum Hoogle says he's playing on easy mode. Maybe that's why he was going out Richie without taking any cover, because he knows. Ashley in the chat says, I thought Bill died, cry emoji. And Jin says, yeah, I thought he was dying too. And then, of course, Richie, we cut to the next scene, which is another time jump, which is a whole 10 years later. We see a man in a wheelchair being wheeled out the front porch of a house. Like many, bait and switch, like Jin in the chat, thought it was Bill in the wheelchair. He got shot, and then as we get closer, we realise that actually Frank's the one in the wheelchair. And in the last 10 years, clearly the protector and the carer roles have almost switched in a weird emotional way, and we see Frank being wheeled out. He's clearly not very well.
Well, it's set up to make you think that it's going to be Bill, because, I mean, bear in mind the scene before, we just get seen, like,
we thought
Bill
he was dead.
Shot in the abdomen. And, like, earlier in the scene, like, Bill saying, I'm sorry for getting older faster than you.
Yeah. But he likes them older.
But yeah, he does.
It's a nice little relationship touch point. But yeah, we kind of see the roles reversed. So Frank's doing his painting and Bill's attempting to maintain the place. I think he's watering the plants and everything, because Frank clearly isn't able to. I think the house is visibly starting to decay a little bit into a state of disrepair, where the grass isn't being cut. I guess again, 10 years have passed. Yeah, absolutely. All things age with time. We see they have a meal. I think Frank's on medication. He's clearly not well. The showrunners did explain that it was possibly MS or an early on-stage set of ASL.
Yeah,
ASL. That's the one.
They've done the thing where it doesn't necessarily matter what the disease is. It's a debilitating disease. What matters is what these two characters are going through together.
Absolutely.
The nature of the disease is actually kind of inconsequential.
ALS, Hungry Meal points out.
Yeah,
I knew
ALS.
when I typed that, I thought I typed it wrong, but I didn't have time before we went live to check it. So yeah, on set, like I said, a disease. He clearly doesn't have full use of his bodily functions and stuff as well. Yes, thank you, ALS, yes.
Yeah.
Pardon me. But yes, they go to bed. He carries him, he places him in the bed, and you can kind of see it's more became about just Bill caring for Frank now. And they both go to sleep. He wakes up in the morning, and weirdly enough, he's spent all night climbing out of bed, Richie. And we almost had that moment where I think you see Bill wake up and Frank's slightly out of focus in the wheelchair. Very reminiscent of the lady in the wheelchair from episode 1 behind Sarah. And I'm thinking, why is he out of focus? Why can we not see him? And then as Bill wakes up, we get back in the focus. He's clearly just tired and sat in the chair.
Frank was dead in this moment.
Right. So a little bit again, they're playing with the focus really well.
Yeah, playing with the focus. He's clearly staring at Bill. I kind of thought, is he realised that he's on his way out? He just wants to spend his last night kind of staring at Bill, like watching Bill is the man he loves sleep.
Yeah. Kind of creepy, but yeah, no. I can see in that scenario why you might want to do that. He sees you while you're sleeping. But then, they go. He argues immediately. Bill gets up and says, what the hell are you doing? Let's get you back in the bed. Your feet will go blue. And Frank just, again, is quite frank with him. He says, I'm not going to lie back down. I'll be up all day, I promise. And he says, why? This is my last day. And it cuts them on the couch talking about it. And Frank basically explains that he's pretty much had enough and he wants to go. And we see them sat on the couch. Bill's on the couch, Frank's in his wheelchair. And he explains to him, he says, look, can you just give me one more good day? And he says, I don't want to give you the whole God speech about whatnot. We've had good days, we've had bad days, but I just want one more good day. And you can see Bill getting really kind of like worked up at this point. He's coming to terms with his partner, essentially saying, like, I want to end it. Like, I'm fed up of this life. It's no life to live. And he gives him the rundown of saying, like, give me that
Frank's
one good day.
Whole thing was like where Bill was just very much the survivalist. Frank wanted to live. Mm-hmm. And that difference now, Frank is at this point where he feels like he can't live, he can't enjoy his life anymore. Mm-hmm. And he's probably been thinking about this for a long time. Frank's come to terms with it.
Yeah. He's obviously ready to go.
You can tell from the way he talks to Bill, where Bill is completely distraught. He's breaking up. Frank is very
Yeah, this was probably the first major part of the episode where I welled up myself, where I was like, oh shit, like the delivery from both actors in this scene was just fantastic. And the calmness of Frank delivering everything, just saying like, let's get some nice clothes, let's get married, because again, the whole legal marriage thing, you're going to cook me a delicious dinner. And then like very calmly just says, you're going to crush these pills, put them in my drink, I'm going to go to bed, I'm just going to go to sleep in the arms of the person I love. And it's like the way he delivers it, and you can see Nick Offerman at that time, like he just cranks up the emotion beat for beat. Like every line he's delivering, saying this is the plan, and each line of the plan he delivers, you can almost see him just like tearing up inside, like having to come to terms with this is the day ahead. Like imagine that being, you get out of bed, you want your breakfast, Rich, you want to start your day. You don't want the person that you absolutely love with all of your heart and soul saying, we're going to do some gorgeous and beautiful things together today, but the inevitable end will end within the next 14, 15 hours.
Yeah. This is our last moments together. Let's make the most of them because they will not be another day.
Absolutely. And this, for me, is where you give Nick Offerman all the awards that he's possibly nominated for at the end of the year.
It's both of them. Like, for different reasons. This is such a, performance of the week, like the moment of the week. There you go.
I tell you, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are never going to get the Performance of the Week award. Hungry Moogle and Chat, yes, it's such a great and emotional sequence. Yeah, this was the first of few that kind of basically got me into the like, oh shit, this is hitting home real. We see a beautiful montage with some very serene music playing over the background, basically of the events of Frank's plan. They do everything that they promised to each other, and it's all like overlapped. And we get to this culmination point where they sit down and they share the exact same meal. Richie cooks the exact same beautiful rabbit for them. They share the wine. Again, you don't really hear them. It's all just the music playing in the background.
There's a lot of small details. It's the exact same meal. Bill kind of points it in, like, arranges the plate in the exact same way. Frank then fiddles with it in the exact same way.
Yeah, he rotates it round.
The only real difference is where they're sitting on the table. Where the first time they sat opposite, they sit next to each other now. It's more, they're closer. It's
absolutely,
more intimate.
There's no divide between them. They are one and the same in a relationship. We see that the music kind of fades out. He gives them the wine, which again, as an audience, we all know what's in the wine. He's explained it. We see him prepare it, and he hands them over. He necks it in one, Frank, and then
that's the second bottle. The first bottle he opens at the table. We all see Bill open it at the table.
That's true.
Important pauses. It's the second bottle he comes in. It's already open.
Yeah. So Frank necks his wine. Bill necks his wine, and they kind of share it. Which again, I'm sure every wine lover out there is like, no, you don't just neck it. You don't just chug it back. But I guess when it's supposed to kill you, you want to make sure.
I'm pretty sure Frank probably clocked that bottle of wine was already open. Before he drank.
Yeah, I mean, we did
Bill
as an audience
like
member.
The sort of guy, he would have these little traits that he's very particular about. Mm-hmm. So when he brings a bottle of wine, he'll open it at the table. It's probably something he does every single day of his life for the last 20 years. It's
like wine connoisseur etiquette, isn't it? Is you show them the bottle, you open the bottle. Even when he pours it with the thumb in the base of the bottle, like you would expect in a fancy restaurant. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. He comes in. The bottle is open. They share the next bottle of wine, and then I think Frank asks him, he's like, "Is that wine like laced with the same stuff? How much?" Yeah, and he says, "Enough to kill a horse." Like very deadpan delivery day. Enough to kill a horse. It's like
very Nick Offerman.
It is, yeah, and it takes a little bit of tension out of the moment because, like, again, what they're doing is they're both committing suicide together, essentially.
Yeah.
And then again, the neck of the wine, they've done it now. They've committed to it. And Bill just says, "Yeah, look, I'm old, I'm satisfied, and you were my purpose."
It's not the tragic suicide at the end of the play. It's I'm old, you were my purpose. I'm done.
Yeah, beautiful moment. He says, "Just let's go to bed," and they wheel him up. They go into the bedroom, and I do point out the music at this moment. I don't know if you noticed it, but this is the music lifted straight from the video game. This is when Ellie's in a very summer moment with the giraffe, and they see the giraffe, and the music plays, and Joel has that moment of, are we continuing on with this journey, or we can end it right here? And again, when I heard it, I was like, that's from the game straight. I couldn't tell what part it was, and then on the second watching, I was like, I know exactly what part of the game that's from, and it fits this scene so perfectly. They go off, the door shuts. That's the end of Bill and Frank. Amazing. So much subtlety in the scene as well. Like, you don't have to see them dying. It's the setup. We know what's going to go along with. And Jem in the chat says, "Yeah, I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied." So we cut, I guess, back to our other couple in this episode. We've got Joel and Ellie. They arrive at Billstown. Something's not right. They come across the house. Joel's kind of checking in. We see Joel knows the code for the gate, so it kind of shows, I guess, where their relationship's evolved into. He's not kept at a gun's distance. He literally knows the code to get into Billstown, which shows they are friends to some degree. He trusts him to give him the code to everything.
Yeah, they're kind of not the friends, and the kind of friends are kind of not, but there is that mutual trust between them. Like, I think Joel immediately, as soon as he comes up the gate, he's probably not been there in a long time. He immediately knows something's off just by looking around the place. Everything's overgrown, plants are dying. He knows, okay, this is not a good situation. What's happened? Yeah,
and you really do, like you said, see the place in a bit of disrepair. He comes up on the house, the door's not locked. You'd imagine you start, again, Joel knowing the world and the way he does, your suspicions must be like heightened to like, oh shit, what's going on? And yeah, enters the house. We see dust on the table. We can see their meals out. The lights are still on as well, even though it's the middle of the day. We see it pan across the candles which were lit, and they've just melted down to a pool of flat wax. And we know, of course, as the audience, what's happening. We don't really know the time frame. I don't know about you, but guessing by like the remnants of food on the plate, it's recent, but not like the food hasn't gone totally crazy and moldy and stuff. There's a bit of dust on the table, but it's not. It's not ages.
It's mold. It is definitely moldy, so it's probably at least a few weeks, probably maybe months, but it's not just gone.
Yeah, it's not like clicker time frame.
Let us know, chat, if you know how quickly rabbit decays.
If there was any left, if it was your last meal, I feel like I would have polished off every last morsel. But yes, Joel goes and explores. He finds the door kind of pushed back, but before he's able to push the door fully open for the bedroom, the front door shuts, which anyone who lives in a house who has their windows open in the summer will know a draft can do that. So that kind of leans into us finding out that the window's open in a short while, that there's something preventing Joel from getting into the room, and the door kind of dissuades him from it. Very, again, I think our directorial choice from the show creators there to have that moment happen, because he could have just burst in through the door and went, oh shit, and we could have had a gruesome body scene, but we didn't need that.
It would have undercut what we've just witnessed for most of the episode, I think, a bit. It would have just been gratuitous for no reason. What's the payoff there?
Yeah.
As soon as Joel and Ellie turn up, you know they're dead.
Yeah.
As soon as they walk in the house, it's not like either of them have survived the situation. You know that immediately. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, Ellie's told to stay where she is, but of course she goes wandering around. She finds a note left from Bill, which I think Hungry Moogle in the chat points out. Yeah, the date on the letter is the end of August.
I was going to say we could probably backdate this, because we know how frequently, like, if Bill doesn't manually reset the radio, it defaults to 80s.
Yeah, he does say that, doesn't he?
So, and it clicks over to 80s as they were leaving Boston. So we kind of know roughly the time scale. So it's probably about a month.
There'll be someone out there who'll do a YouTube video of like, did you notice this in The Last of Us? But yeah, very good point. Very good point. Yeah, she finds the letter. Joel goes back and he lets her read it up. And some of the points in the letter to point out, he lets Ellie read it. If you find this, please don't come in the bedroom. He jokes about saying it's probably Joel reading this, because if it's not Joel, my fence will have killed you, or my traps will have killed you.
Something.
And he just, then she reads out the laugh in a very chuckle. I did like that touch. It reads very much like Bill. He says, take anything you need. Anyway, I never liked you. We were almost friends. So again, just very Bill dry humour, saying, look, Joel, you're not a good guy, but I guess we're kind of friends. He explains in the letter, I used to hate the world and I was happy when everybody died. So Bill, again, totally thrilled with the apocalypse happening. There was one person worth saving, and that's what I did. I saved him. I protected him. That's why men like you and me are here. We have to do our job, and God help any motherfuckers who stand in our way. I leave you all my weapons. Use them to keep. And then Ellie pauses. And again, as an audience member, we know what that letter says, right?
Yeah, we get a close-up on the letter.
We do.
On one particular word.
Yeah. Use them to keep Tess safe. And of course, at this point, Joel unfortunately hasn't done that. And that kind of echoes the reverse of what this episode's about. It's all about protecting and love and cherishing and caring and paying attention to the things you love. And immediately, this is like possibly a few days after, Joel's failed to do that already. And it's like,
it's not even a few days. It was like a 5-hour walk.
That's
from
true.
Where we at the start of the episode to Billstown, and that was 10 miles outside of Boston at the start. So if we assume that was the next morning, this is probably mid-afternoon, early evening to get there. So it's 2 days max.
Yeah, but
it's like Bill kind of going like, you know what, Joel, I know there's something there, even if you're not willing to admit it, because I'm you.
Yeah.
But I allowed myself to not be that guy anymore. I met Frank, and Frank brought this out of me. So it's like, do that, learn from me.
Yeah,
kind of
it really does. And it really does echo that Frank, Bill was closed off from the world. Joel, because of the events that happened with Sarah, has closed himself off from the world to a large extent. And even though he was with Tess, it was never quite explicit. I think even when they're having their little dinner table conversation, he says he doesn't say girlfriend, partner, lover, anything like that. He just says my version of Frank, essentially. And it's like kind of Joel again, so defensive, so protective. But in this moment, Ellie knows what she's meant to read. Joel knows what it says. And already, like you said, he's less than a day detached from not protecting that person. He goes on to say, I'll leave you all my weapons as well. And then Joel takes a moment to leave the house. He takes the letter. And I think this is the closest we get to, I think Joel was ready to crack there. Like Pedro Pascal does really well to demonstrate that he's clearly ready to pop with emotion, and he does just enough.
This is what I was saying earlier, like at the start of the show, where although it takes a different route, there's very much that development between Joel and Ellie happening through Billstown, without them actually having to do any sort of action. Because this is, I think, a critical pivot moment in Joel and how he's seeing Ellie. Because he kind of, when he goes back into the house, he's different. His plans are different. It's not just this. She's not just cargo that happens to occasionally annoy him by talking. This is where he accepts kind of like Tessa's like kind of last will, really, of like look after this person.
Ironically enough, Bill's last will. It's Bill's letter that echoes the sentiments of what Tess wanted him to do. Bill's will. And then, back to the line in the letter. I saved him and protected him. Swap that out to Ellie. I saved her and protected her. That's why men like you and me are here. We have to do our job, and God help anyone who stands in our way.
Classic Bill move. When Joel goes into the garage, sees the car. Car's in pretty good nick. Opens up the bonnet. No battery.
Yep.
Opens up the fridge. The components to make a battery.
Yeah. Again, good nod to the video game, because anyone who's played the game knows the whole reason you go to Billstown is to get the car battery. And there's the whole adventure ensues in the video game with trying to find said battery from, ironically, Frank, who had it all along.
It's the whole thing as well, actually. You have a car. If you leave like a battery in your car and don't run your car every so often, the battery goes flat. Bill will know that. So what's the best way to like look after it? Because he's not driving anywhere, realistically. But he wants to be prepared just in case he needs to.
Yeah. He has a boat.
Yeah.
And I don't know how close they are to the sea or a river or anything, but that could be another escape plan. It was his
neighbours. He nicked in like at the start of the episode.
Oh, man, you've always wanted a boat. The world's gone to shit. I'm going to steal myself a boat. But yeah, they kind of pack things up. Ellie finds a gun in Frank's drawer after they go through all the stuff, and she sees the big wall of guns, and she's like,
no.
Please, can I have one? And he's like, no, you're not allowed a gun. Which, again, you got such a collection. Like, you think at this point you'd let her have one, but she doesn't. She finds one in Frank's kind of writing drawer. You see Ellie donning her iconic T-shirt from the video game, which she wears for the majority of it.
Before this, when he walks back into the house, one of the first thing he asks Ellie is to see her arm.
Yeah, he wants.
And this is why I think this is such a pivotal moment for Joel. One of the first things when he speaks to Ellie again is, "Let's see, show me your arm." It's like he's looking at his arms, like he's making a decision at that point. It's like, okay, then maybe I wasn't willing to accept it before, but maybe there is something to this. Like, he's probably seen loads of people get bit and tear. It's like, she's got 2 bites on that arm now. It's like,
yeah, we're a whole extra day detached, and it's fine.
It's a nasty scar, but that's all it is.
Yeah, and again, Joel has also potentially just lost 2 more friends.
Yeah.
Like he had Tess, he had Bill and Frank to some degree. Now Tommy's pretty much the only other person we know of in Joel's life who's left, and he's got this girl by last will and testament to look after her. He clearly has double checked that she's not infected, and he decides, right, like we start here, and he lays down the ground rules. He explains almost word for word from the game. We don't talk about Tess anymore. We keep our histories to ourselves. I almost mimed this to my wife, annoyingly, when they were going through it, because it was one of them delivering it exact same way. 2, don't show anyone your bite mark. He says condition. He pauses and does that. If anyone learns about your condition, they'll shoot you there and then. And 3, do what I say when I say it. Is that clear? Say it back to me. And Ellie, just being Ellie's like, I ain't going to repeat that back to you. What you say goes. And that's do what I say. Yeah. He explains the rules and says, look, I am taking you on this crazy adventure, but we have some ground rules to establish. And she's like, let's get on with it. Let's get on with it. Yeah. Let's get on with it, as Bill would say. So yeah, Ellie's got a gun, she's got a t-shirt, they get in the car, and I love any moment Ellie's kind of around technology, because it is it's a childish moment, but at the same time, she's never experienced this, and I love the moment when...
And she is a child.
Yeah, she is a child, but like she's never possibly been in a car, and I love the moment when he's like, put your seatbelt on, and she's kind of just going, huh? What? And he's like, this thing, you need a seatbelt because you're in a car, and it's again that element of Joel being a father.
What a seatbelt was.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't blame her. And I love, again, Joel just being that, those little touches of fatherly paying care and attention to her. And he's like, yeah, get your seatbelt on. And she's like, it's a spaceship. So
he's just like, seriously? All right.
She messes with the mirror, which again is, I thought that was funny because as soon as she messed the mirror, I thought, oh, well, he's not going to be able to use that to drive now. But then at the same time, there ain't going to be any cars behind them, Richie. He doesn't need rear view mirrors. He's just going in one direction. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I thought that was funny.
The seatbelt thing, that's another dad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't mess around.
That again, these are little details where I think his instinct as a parent comes through.
Yeah.
Like, put your seatbelt on. Like, we're driving.
Mm-hmm. And she might very much need that seatbelt in the next episode. So they set off in the car. We see them drive down the road, off into the distance. He goes through the gate. Joel, of course, knows all the codes now, so he's got access to all of Bill's town. They drive off in the distance. Ellie finds a cassette, messing around, just again, as kids do, rummaging through the glove box. Finds it, sticks it on, and then what song is it, Richie? None other than the same song from earlier on. So we get the Linda Ronstadt's Long Time once again playing out as the camera kind of pans away and the camera pulls through an open window showing the curtains in the breeze, which of course is the room that Bill and Frank, rest in peace, within.
Yeah.
And I love this moment because it's literally imagery straight from the video game. If anyone's played, the menu title screen on the game is an open window, curtains moving, with a nice breeze.
An early concept of starting and closing every episode with something like that, which I think would have got a bit corny.
Yeah, I think they realised it
doing
themselves.
It this time, it works really well.
Absolutely. You've got the swell of the music. You've got us as an audience knowing Bill and Frank have said their goodbyes. They've gone to sleep together. And Joel and Ellie are now off on their adventure. And it's just the perfect culmination of how to end an episode. Like, it just works perfectly. And as an audience, we just get to rest on this calm breeze, life happening, adventure going on about its business, people put to rest, and end. Cut to credits.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely stellar episode. Loved it. Nothing to do with The Last of Us, but wow, what an episode. Amazing acting, music throughout, key moments, and just, detached from the whole story. But as many people online have said, some of the best television ever, one of the best romantic relationships ever on screen. And I thought it was absolutely terrific.
Indeed. I think it was a brave decision to be such a departure from the game, but they nailed it so well. It's 100% the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And like you said, things to do with the internet and online stuff, I expected to see more hatred, but maybe in society we're reaching this point, Richie, where it's acceptable. And don't get me wrong, there will be people out there who go, oh, a man on man on TV. Oh, and it's like, these relationships exist. These gay relationships, lesbian, whatever relationships, they are real, whether it's post-apocalyptic or not. Just because it's on television, it doesn't make any difference. It's a relationship.
It's HBO. Yeah, there was a gay sex scene. It wasn't overdone, though, and we've seen plenty of heterosexual sex scenes in it. We've seen lesbian sex scenes in HBO shows before. Why
Game
should
of
this be any
Thrones.
different?
Absolutely.
And again, it was done in a tasteful manner because it made sense for the episode. It wasn't gratuitous at all.
No. I don't think it was any different. If you swapped any characters in or out, it's one of those things that it's telling a story about love and relationships, and
it's
whether
nice to see a shirtless man on TV who's got a hairy chest.
Do you approve of that, do you? As
I do.
As a fellow hairy chest man.
As a fellow hairy-chested man, like pretty much every man you see take his shirt off on TV is just pristine, like waxed.
Pristine waxed. I think it led to a lot, but yeah, if that scene or those scenes were disturbing for you or something, you should probably look at yourself a little bit more in the mirror and think, why were you bothered by two men on screen together? If it was two women together or a man and a woman, it's just two people in love. And yeah, again, maybe look in the mirror a little bit longer. But there was a few points I think that we wanted to point out. So the director that brought in that we specifically mentioned, and the actors who play them as well. So a lot of the crew that was brought on to help direct this episode were gay men in gay relations, middle-aged men specifically. I think Craig Mazin points out on the official podcast is they wanted a team that represented the story they were trying to tell. And he said actually it wasn't necessarily gay men they needed, it was middle-aged men, because it was telling you about getting old together, being in a long-term relationship.
They needed, when they were casting for Frank, because Frank is kind of a blank slate of a character. They didn't really have anything clearly in mind. They ideally wanted a middle-aged gay man because they wanted to draw on personal experience, really. And the same with the director, with Peter Haw. He's a middle-aged gay man because that's what they needed. And as Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin are both heterosexual men, it's like, I think that was the right thing. It's like, we understand that our knowledge and experiences is limited. Let's bring in people can help us bridge that gap and make sure we do this right.
Yeah. And again, it goes to show they did it right. And Nick Offerman, heterosexual man, married with a wife. And again, he's a fantastic actor, and he did the role complete justice in this one as well. And it just goes to show that, anyone can be who they want to be, what they want to be, when they want to be. But rounding things out, Richie, we'll go to our typical breakdown of the final episode. As we look ahead to next week, of course, the little teaser we see at the end of each episode, you can look it up on YouTube if you want to, from HBO's YouTube channel. It looks like Joel and Ellie's car ride will be cut short. We're going to experience some kind of raiders or hunters, as they're known as in the faction portion of the video game. I hope we do get that amazing scene from the game, though, where that guy on the road seemingly is going like, oh, please, someone help me. And Joel's like, check your seatbelt. Well, we need to help him. He's sick. And he's like, he's not hurt. And then shit ensues, basically.
In the trailer for next week's episode, they see a guy on the road. Ellie's like, should we help him? And Joel's like, no. And then it cuts away. So I think we'll get that. Yeah. I'm hoping we get the upside down scene. I
think they might work a couple of the scenes from Billstown into this one. Joel needs his bow and arrow as well.
I think we're due for an action episode now.
Yeah, I absolutely think so as well. Get back to Joel and Ellie's story and what the start of their adventure, their journey, I should say. Stop saying adventure because it's more of a journey. What they're going to come up against. And Ellie's really, like, I know we've said she's got quite violence oriented, but I think we need to see some actual panic now where she needs to be scared of what's out there.
We're going to get that scene in the game where she first kills something with a gun and Joel's is like,
shit.
What the? Yeah.
Well, as soon as she got her gun, I put that two and two together and thought, like, she's going to have to save Joel in some way. He's going to be like, where did you get a gun from? And she's like, I saved your ass. But rounding things out, performance of the week, Richie? Is it going to follow the trend of all of our previous episodes?
Right. There's two clear. I mean, let's be fair. Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey, Anna Torv barely in the episode.
Correct.
Pedro Pascal does do a fantastic job, I think, of him, like that kind of closed off person feeling his emotions and stuff when he realizes Bill and Frank are dead, and he's feeling like what's going on with Tess and all that sort of stuff. But it's Nick Offerman or Murray Bartlett by a long way. It's hard to pick one because it's very much a duet.
It is. It really is. Chat, do let us know who your MVP of the week is. Jem says it's the clicker in the basement. He took that hit like a champ. that knife to the head, he really, really did. And
again, the clickers have hired for this. They're doing really good
Oh,
jobs.
terrific.
They can't read, speak.
Yeah, I think I'm with you as well. Like they are almost like a couple. They're an absolute duet. But if I was to pick one of the two, I'd lean towards Nick Offerman because I think he shows the vulnerability to start with, and then he opens up to being there. So he almost plays two characters in this episode, where as good as Murray Bartlett is, he's very much the same Frank throughout. Although he teaches Bill, I think Nick Offerman has to do both sides of that, and I think he delivers it fantastically. In the emotional beats when Frank's telling him, Murray's delivering the lines, but Frank's the one who has to really react to them, and I think that, for me, tips it. If I was to pick one, as much as I think... Again, we have no rules here on our show. We can put both of them down. But I think if I was to focus one...
I'm thinking we need to put both, to be honest, because I get what you're saying about Nick Offerman over Murray Bartlett, but I do see this as very much such a duet. Like, one doesn't work without the other kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
So yeah.
If I was to say like Emmy Awards or Grammys or whatever the hell the awards are for television nowadays, I think Nick Offerman gets the Best Actor award for TV, and I think Murray gets the Best Supporting Actor award. I could see that happening, like a double duet, and them both getting up on stage and winning it. After all, they are married.
And I think these are the best performances that we've seen so far in the entire show as well.
I would agree. They definitely had the strongest material to play with as well, to showcase that range of emotion. In the chat, Hungry Moogle says, yeah, it was great to see Offerman in a role you wouldn't normally see him in. Jem says, both actors were great, but for me, Bill is MVP because I've seen him in other shows and I'm more familiar with his work. That is fair. Greatly impressed with the show. I don't know the other actor. I know Murray Bartlett was recently in White Lotus, which I think he got a lot of praise for that. And I think
He's
Craig...
actually cast for this before that.
Yeah, they said when they saw him in White Lotus in his performance, they were like, holy shit, like we're on to a winner here with this guy.
Nailed the casting.
Win-win. Jin says, I'd say Bill wins it, but I am biased towards him because of his work. Yeah, it is easy to lean, I guess, into a character you already know, or an actor, you already know, because you've got their work. And I think that pivot from comedy to serious like drama and emotion, it is telling, whereas Murray's a lesser known actor, to say the least. There's definitely more gifs out there in the world of Nick Offerman if you're looking for a fun gif. I think we've shared about 10 in our lads chat group today with our friends, just because there's so many Parks and Rec gifs, but because he is essentially Bill in a lot of those shots, it works. Raven says, excited to see Nick Offerman in the show, even Troy Baker upcoming. Ashley confirms Murray Bartlett is unreal in White Lotus, so go check that out if you've not seen that show. And Jem, if you didn't know, Troy Baker is in the show. He's going to be, seemingly from the trailers, one of David's henchmen. So we don't know how big of a role.
Back end of the show.
Yeah, although we have our suspicions, don't we, Richie, which we'll get into when the episode comes around. Moment of the week for you? Chat, moment of the week?
I think it's got to be like the scene where like they're just sat in the living room. Frank's asking Bill basically to kill him. That entire conversation. It's because I think there's a level of acting on display there that you rarely get to see in a TV show. It's like that was incredible scene.
Yeah, there's crying on cue, and there is visibly showing internal torture and your life essentially ending in front of your eyes. And I think,
but even like Murray Bartlett playing Frank, he's perfect portraying this guy who's probably been thinking about this for months and how he wants to do it and what he wants his last day to be and how he's going to break the news to Bill. And like, he doesn't get emotionally revved up. You can tell the emotion's there.
The nuance is
like,
on point.
He needs to deliver this in a way so that this isn't seen as an emotional outburst. I have decided, this is done. This is not a conversation about should we do this or not. This is me asking you to do this thing. Yeah.
I think a lot of the chat agrees with that one. Nick says Frank telling him he wants to die. So sad but good. That look in Bill's eyes was something else. And that line. Love me like I want to. Go make me some toast. Again, just lifted
a little bit of comedy,
it,
that levity into it. So
go
make me some toast.
Couch crying.
I'm hungry.
Couch crying. Absolutely. Let's put that down for moment of the week. And then final one, Richie, the best game adaptation of the week. So what was mirrored from the video game into this, which there's not much to pick from this week.
Yeah.
What do you reckon? I'm leaning towards just the end, just where we get the car, the T-shirt, and the window scene, like kind of that whole culmination of them beginning their full journey, because all the Bill and Frank stuff wasn't in the game, so...
Yeah, I don't think there is a real thing, because this episode isn't really an adaptation of the game. It's an alternative way it could have played out. So like, I'm trying to think of like anything. There's nothing that's a real 1-for-1.
I mean, I'm going to go with the last stuff, the window.
Yeah,
I think that's so. That is literally the game. The first game's over. I've stared at that screen for so. I mean, it's the bloody intro to our show, Richie. Yeah. Anyone watching along live has that intro. So how can you get a more iconic scene from the game than the menu screen?
Yeah, my only thought is like it was used fantastically.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really. It's done in a completely different context to how the game uses. So, but I do think you're right. You're right, because there's no major scenes that have a kind of 1-for-1 adaptation or slightly manipulated or anything. It's just like, and the episode didn't need it.
Yeah. Confirmed, Richie hates Windows. That's why he uses an Apple Mac, everyone.
That is not true.
That is not true. You're
More
right.
likely the other way around.
Definitely. I did actually notice as well, Bill was using Windows 2000 instead of XP on his computer, but XP was available at the time, so it just echoed Bill's character that he wouldn't upgrade.
That's how they get you.
He wouldn't upgrade his PC software because, people are watching. So we don't. To be fair, I'm very reluctant to upgrade to the next Windows when they finally do bring it out.
But Windows 11.
I know I haven't upgraded to it yet. I'm like Bill. I just don't have a collection of guns and food ready to go. But I do have an electric fence, so watch out. But that brings us to an end of our review of episode 3 of The Last of Us. Long time. Don't forget, everyone, if you haven't done so already, like, subscribe, click that bell, and of course join us next week on the ClickerCast. If you are watching along live, thank you very much. Thanks to all the amazing people in the chat, many of our Helix heroes out there, Hungry Moogle, Jem, Ashley stopping by, Nick, Raven, you're all terrific. Who else stopped by for them? I'm trying to scroll back up to catch people. Jin was in there as well, Sedna, and all of you other wonderful folks out there. Thank you very much again. This is a show. It's a little bit different to our usual content here on Helix Plays Games, but we do appreciate you stopping by and supporting us all.
Yeah. Shout out to everyone listening this tomorrow on podcast services.
Yeah, we do get up on podcast services, which I need to start remembering to hit record. About 7 minutes into the show, I hit record. So apologies on audio listeners if the first kind of few minutes of the episode is a bit worse for the audio quality, because then I have to capture it from YouTube and then add it to the actual recording, when I remember to do it. So yes, thank you for everyone. It's been another fantastic show, one of our longest ones yet, because again, amazing episode. We'll be back next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. live. But in the meantime, everyone, remember to run along to the comments, stalker us on social media at Helix Plays Games, click at that notification bell, blow to yourself on all of our other amazing content, and above all else, endure and survive. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye.
Ah!